Hey folks, this is Tony. I'm here today with two special guests. I have Al and Andrew. They're from Love of the Game Auctions, and we're in the middle of a huge premiere auction that they have for the spring 2026 season. Hey guys,
Hey, how are you?
Hey,
doing well.
Oh, thanks for having us, Tony. It's always good to see you.
yeah, it's good to be
Yeah.
here.
So you have a lot of lots here.
It's one of our biggest auctions ever in terms of lot count. It's almost 2,000 lots, and we generally like to stay under 1,500. So this one is a special one. But we've got a couple of different sets that we've broken out, and you were just looking at one of them, the 1935 National Chickle football set, which is it's interesting because we're probably best known for baseball, and so we love football and basketball as well, and hockey, but football and basketball for sure. And this set is just such a special set. It's a great, and the cards are beautiful. I think we're one card short in this auction just because PSA made a labeling error. We submitted all of these cards ourselves. You'll see some variety in grade, but really it's a clean and consistent set. The cards all look great. The Nagurski is a 5. I'll say it used to be a 7. The collector who consigned this prefers his cards in binders, and so he bought this as a PSA 7 some time ago, and it's been in his binder, and obviously we resubmitted it to PSA and it's a 5. So what that should tell you is that's a really nice 5, and so it's a gorgeous card. Top to bottom is a little off center, but left to right is very nice, which is unusual for this set and for this card. And it's pretty sharp and clean. It's a beauty.
Great bold colors too, I can
Yeah.
see. And the registration, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, is off the charts. I mean, usually when you see these, there's a little bit of blurriness, but not at all.
Yeah. And they're all kind of that way, Tony. They're just, it's such a beautiful set, and I love the way Chickle ties this set to the Diamond Stars and to the Skybirds. They're all kind of consistent in their design, and they've got these beautiful Art Deco look to them, and the backs are the same, and it kind of allows you to collect the whole universe of cards for that year, all the different sports and non-sports, or you just focus on what you want, or you could just pick off the keys. And of all three of those sets, the Nagurski is the key by far, and it's really the most important football card, and so it's a pleasure to have it in this auction.
I believe the last 12 cards are short prints because they came out later on. So not only do you have them, but I see you have a wrapper here too, and this is another item in hobby history that you don't see.
Yeah, it's a really neat and complete collection. Like I said, the one missing card was PSA made a labeling error, and it confused us, and we wound up listing one of the cards and not the other. And so you'll see that last card, I think Griffiths, you'll see in our next auction. But this is just it's everything. It's the full thing. The set, the wrapper, all the key cards. They're all nice, and those high numbers are really, really tough. So it's pretty cool to be able to offer all of them.
I saw a lot of other football cards that you have in this auction. Would you like to talk about any of them?
Yeah, sure. We've got a really nice collection of Namath cards. We've got some of the tough ones. Like that 1969 Namath in 7. It's a beautiful 7, and that's a tough set with the colored backgrounds, and same goes with 71, with those borders, which are so deep and rich, but also so subject to chipping. You see white tips on the corners and on the edges of those cards, and these two are pretty nice, the 69 and the 71. So that's pretty great. And then the other thing that's really interesting is we have a 1949 Leaf complete set, where this is all about eye. Every card in this set is trimmed, and yet they're all just beautiful, sharp. I mean, those leaf cards are so dicey with the color and the registration, and these are just all so nice. They're just such nice looking cards. And unfortunately, they were collected by an old school collector back in the day, and he didn't do this for deceptive reasons. He did it for because it looked better in the book that he kept them in, and so he just didn't like soft corners. But there's not a crease here. There's not a wrinkle. There's not a red. He went after cards with really nice eye appeal, and then he just cleaned them up a little bit. but if you're not into, or not if you're not into, but if the technical grade of a set, right, or of a card doesn't matter to you, but the eye appeal of a card does matter to you, this is the set for you. These cards are beauties, and we really think that it's a special collection, despite the fact that every card is trimmed. So,
and it's stated up front, so that's nice.
for sure. And the entire set is graded by SGC. Every card is authentic, altered. So it's there's nobody trying to keep any secrets here. This is what are you saying, Andrew?
No, I was going to say I think it's worth noting that you did say it was from an old school collector, but I think it's worth noting that it's been in his possession for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah, it's not like he was running out on eBay and buying these cards. This is an old school collector, who built this set. And I think you're right. It's worth pointing this out because, there was a time that completing a set like 1949 Leaf football or 1935 Chickle, there was a time that might take a person his entire life to do. There was no internet where you could just go log on and find one. Today you can complete almost any set in the hobby. All you need is money, and you could do it. You could complete a Gaudy set in a week, but when this set was collected, like, it really took work to find these cards and track them all down, and much less to find nice examples of them, that were printed well and colorful and clean, so I still think it's a special set, even though that none of the cards will ever get a numerical grade. I think it's a special set.
But for someone who wants to put together a tough set, with the current price, I mean, I think it's a steal.
Gosh, yeah.
So,
but it's hard, it's hard to say what that's worth. What is the hobby going to value that as? Because I think there's a part of the hobby that is so grade oriented, and I don't love that, because sometimes, like in the case of this set, the grade doesn't tell the whole story. Right, what you have here is a beautiful set of cards.
Cards. Look at the registration and the color.
Yeah, I mean, so do you want to go out and find an SGC 5 that has all of its corners and borders, but is printed completely off register? Or do you So I think that there's a place in the hobby for cards like this. I don't like the idea of doctoring cards and trimming them deceptively. I mean, I could talk about that all day, about what's doctoring, but just jumping over that whole argument, these are clearly altered cards, but they are beautiful cards, and so whoever winds up with this is going to wind up with a prize for sure.
And I know this card recently had a PSA 9 sell for nearly $100,000 not too long ago.
Wow.
Because 9's the highest grade. If you compare what's a 9 today to what's a 7 today to what a 9 was yesterday, this card's not that far off from that 9. It's going to cost you a fraction of the.
Sure. And all of the Namath cards here are beautiful, and I think that what I like the most about them is that they were clearly chosen for their eye appeal. Look at the centering on that 68. I mean, it's an 8.5, but I just don't know how it gets much better than that. It's just a beautiful, beautiful card, and it, maybe it doesn't have those that upper left corner and the bottom right is just a tiny, tiny bit touched. But gosh, I would so much rather have a card like this, than have a 9 with a fisheye, or and you see those in these 60s Topps issues. There's a print snow and bad registration and all this. This one is just beautiful. So, and the centering is perfect on this card. So there's that.
Collectors like us, we were around in the 1980s, and while Namath never had the stats as Montana had then, and and quarterbacks who came after him, Namath, he was Broadway Joe. He was all over the place, and that 65 rookie card that was sometimes called the 52 Topps Mantle.
When I was look at the centering on that one. When I was a kid, I had before I knew anything about football, I had a little Joe Namath doll. And there was not a Jets fan in my family, and I grew up right in New Jersey, and Namath was the guy, and look at that. For that grade, where are you going to find a nicer example than that? Tony, we've been spending a lot of time lately talking about eye appeal here, because of what's happening over at Eye Appeal Inc. And what a cool thing that they're doing, what a cool idea that is. As I started to go through this, and I wanted to send them some cards to have their counsel look at, I was sort of going through it and saying, we have so many cards in this auction that have beautiful eye appeal. Like, I could have sent them 500 cards, so it was really hard to narrow it down to a handful. These football cards are right up there. The Namath cards,
So after talking with you and Andrew, I know, like you said earlier, when people think of love of the game auctions, it's baseball, pre-war photography, but there's a lot of good basketball here that ranges across multiple eras.
Mm-hmm. It's a great collection of basketball cards. I think the ones that blow me away the most are the Kahn's Wieners, this is sort of a separate. We had a bunch in our last auction, but particularly the Robertson that you're looking at right there, and the Jerry West. Look at these cards. This one is Eye Appeal Hall of Fame God tier. It's that card is just stunning, rookie card of one of the greats. And look at that. I don't know how it's a 5. I do. You can look at it and you can evaluate it technically for its corners, and I think that bottom one is probably the culprit. The bottom right is probably the culprit there. But when you consider Kahn's Wieners in general, as how they were packaged, and the fact that hot dog cards in general have stains on them from the hot dogs. These cards are forever beaten up, and they're so hard to find, even in 2s and 3s, right? And here we've got this gorgeous 5 that you look at and think, oh my God, how is that a 5? How is this Jerry West? How is this a 6? The cards are so beautiful, and they're rare. They're hard to, not rare, but they're scarce. They're hard to find, and I think that these are pretty excellent, and again, a real good selection of basketball cards. We've been getting some really nice cards in, and I realize that so much of the basketball hobby is focused on modern and ultra modern cards, but we've got some really, really cool vintage pieces in this auction, stuff you don't see very often, and also more affordable grade 61 Fleers. These 1968 Suns Carnation Milk cards are really cool. I had never seen them before, and before we submitted this batch, PSA had graded 1, and so we multiplied the pop report, by 7, and then there's all of these sets that we have that are also pretty nice. So that's cool.
Al, the that Nat Holman Sport Kings card.
Oh my God, yeah,
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's that one has really taken off. It's up around $3,600. It's one of the first basketball cards, of course, and it's a Hall of Famer. It's a Hall of Fame rookie card, and it's autographed. And PSA gave it a 9.
The only example.
Is it the only signed example? Yeah, I mean that's a pretty special card, and it's signed really well. I mean, look at that. It's I mean the positioning of it is perfect, and it's another real beauty. Card is authentic because of a trim, but again, one of these examples where you've got beautiful eye appeal and a great autograph. And find another one. I don't think you can, right, Andrew? I mean, if it's the only signed one on PSA's Pop Report, it's probably not a litany of them out there. Obviously, it was in a scrapbook, as you can tell from the back. That discoloration that you see on the back, that's just from being up against acidic paper and for a long period of time, and so you can see in the corners, the upper right or the upper left and the lower right. There was photo corners, right, Andrew? Is that kind of album that was in?
Yep.
Those little triangular things that everybody's photo albums from when they were kids. Those.
And this is among the first basketball cards. I know we had some in the 1936 Olympic sets, but this came out before then.
Yeah.
And it was in a multi-sport set. But Nat Coleman was one of the first basketball superstars. He played for the Lakers. He played for the Celtics before they became the Boston Celtics. He's an original hoopster. And I was shocked to see this card being available, not only being available, but signed. I helped Ray from Philly, who has a YouTube channel, with the Basketball Card Hall of Fame. And this was the oldest card that we had nominated. It didn't make the first class, because no one really knows who Nat Coleman is. But if you study basketball, his name comes up frequently.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the basketball cards in the Sport King set are the first basketball cards featuring actual players.
Yep. So lot 1768, when I first got back into the hobby, 2018, I was only in for about a year, picked up my Mike Schmidt and Steve Carlin cards, a couple of Reggies. But then when 2022 came around, and I'm like, I always wanted the 1969 Topps basketball set. I was able to find them. They're around. But when it comes to the eye appeal, going back to how the card looks, regardless of the grade, it's one of the toughest sets out there to find centered. And that's even before you get to the checklist, which is a card on its own in terms of finding one centered and unmarked. But when I saw this here, lot 1768, the 69 Topps basketball card set, like, wow. Every card is nice.
Yeah.
And it's already graded. All the All-Stars are all graded, the key cards.
Yeah, it's really, it's a cool set. I love the tall boy basketball cards. This year, the next year is 76. The Icy Bears. I just like, for whatever reason, the substance of those cards. They're colorful and they're cool. Basketball is a cool sport, and late 60s, early 70s basketball was just, such a quick evolution in the game, and how the game is played, and the elegance of it, and I like everything about it. And these are gorgeous cards, one of these sets where the stars are, a lot of times we'll see a set where the collector put it together, and the commons are beautiful high grade cards, and then the stars are a little bit less because they cost more. This was kind of all assembled at the same time. And Andrew, were these all assembled in the year of issue?
Given where they came from, I would guess.
Yeah,
that's the case.
And it's so you've got cards that were collected by an adult for sure, and somebody that that really did pay attention and try and take care of their cards, but clearly also somebody who even back then was paying attention to the eye appeal of the card.
And the next set is lot 1769, right after that one. And this is the 1970 basketball set. This is another nice set because it took what worked in 1969-70 and it changed it around a little bit, but you still have the solid color backgrounds, bright, bold. You got the, since they weren't NBA licensed cards at the time and didn't have the ABA players, they're wearing the jerseys backwards or they're hiding the jersey, just like Pistol Pete is here. He's hiding the logo on his jersey, but these are fantastic also.
Yeah, great cards, and legendary names, just top to bottom. Names that I find myself looking them up, and even PSAs on some of these PSAs information about who's in the Hall of Fame in their price guide is wrong, and but you start looking at these names, and it's just great. It's a great set. It's just packed with star power, and I love sets like that where there's just even the commons have some meaning to them and some value there.
Cool set.
Yeah.
So Andrew and Al, as a Star basketball fan, those cards from 83 to 85 hold a special place in my heart. I found a couple of these lots. Maybe we can touch upon them. Lot 1770. This is the 85 Star Light All-Stars. And these are the light for, as in Miller Light. And I know the Jordan sold at the last auction, I believe.
Right.
But you have the rest of the set here.
Andrew, you want to talk about this collection? This is a great collection, and Andrew's the one who reeled it in.
Oh, well, these cards and several of the other basketball cards in this auction originated from the same collector, who's another guy who was an old school collector who's been collecting his entire life, going back probably to the 50s. And he had close to the complete set of all the Star cards. He had several Jordans. I don't think he didn't have the really important Jordan, but certainly several of them that we've sold in the past. And these are kind of what's left from that run. I think we actually might have a couple more.
Yeah. There's some of those smaller sets. They were all in one big binder, and they're pretty cool. It's a cool player selection and cool little design motifs that they carried through to all of these different sets, and I like them.
It's a who's who of basketball stars from the 1980s going into the 1990s. So in lot 1773, we had the 85 Star All-Star rookie set, and everyone is here except for Jordan, but he still has some huge names here. You got Stockton, Barkley, Olajuwon. Then you got the backs here. These are really sharp cards. It's always a challenge getting these graded because the Star QC was iffy. But when it came to the photography and the design used and the player selection, they did a good job there.
And again, with these cards, I think it's also worth noting that they've been in the same collection for decades and decades. Since the cards were issued, actually. So it's not like these cards have been sold and resold and throughout the 40 years.
And if you look at them, really the issue with the grades is nitpicky stuff. Like these are all sharp, brand new, out of the wrappers and into plastic sheets. You can see little white tips on the corners of the Barkley there, like that kind of stuff. That's what these are the grading issues with these cards. They're gorgeous cards, and so it's, the grading standards of today. I mean, we could talk about it all day. They are far more, they're not grading the cards. They're essentially trying to knock the cards down, and that is not, I don't think in the spirit of assessing condition. I think anybody would be happy to have these cards in their collection.
As someone who graded over 100 Royal Star cards from 83, 84, 85, 86, 83, 84, 84, 85, I'm looking at this Stockton here, and I'm trying to figure out why it's a 5. And it's a beautiful 5, and I'm not second-guessing PSA or...
Oh, you're allowed.
Nah, that's for a different show, over a few beers. Star designed these cards to have a thicker upper border. So and I call this the racetrack, the little white line. So from the racetrack to the top edge of the card, it's supposed to be a little thick if you look at the uncut sheets, because we do have a few of them around here. PSA tends to penalize cards a little too harshly when it comes to that, because they want them to be centered, just like this Barkley is here and this Olajuwon here. The only issue is this wasn't how the card was made. And if you flip the card to the back, you'll see what I'm saying. So
That's interesting, Tony. I've never seen a sheet, so this is news to me. This is good info.
Yeah, so like I look at the backs here, and you see how this isn't really centered here on the back, but on the front it is.
Mm-hmm.
Let me zoom out a little bit to zoom in here. And then if you look at the middle card, Barkley, a little bit better centered. But if you compare the Barkley and the Olajuwon to the Stockton, you can see how Star designed that top border to be a little bit thicker. And they started changing it as the sets got older into the 85, 86 season. But yeah, these are beautiful cards here.
Interesting. Yeah.
Alan, Andrew, I noticed quite a few 62 Topps cards, and they're high grade cards.
Yeah.
Regardless of when they were graded, these are really sharp cards. And you have it's like a master set that I read.
Yeah.
And you have the variations, the tints, the not tints, and some of the other ones. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because it's a beautiful set.
Yeah. This set is the number 6 set on the PSA registry that we have elected to sell broken up mostly into individual lots. And the main reason why we did that is because there are some single cards in here that are so tough that they haven't sold in a decade. And so, you don't think of Topps that way, and the cards are not scarce, but they're scarce in this grade. And then beyond the grade, I can tell you that these cards were collected by a guy with an unbelievable eye who worked on this set for 40 years and just constantly upgrading and upgrading and upgrading and upgrading within the grade, I have this in a 9, but this is a nicer 9, like that kind of stuff. I mean, look at that Mantle. I mean, it's an 8, but it's as beautiful as it gets. And Topps in this era, and particularly with this set, print snow, centering issues, right off the production line, there were condition issues with these cards. And then you throw in that wood grain border, which is so susceptible to chipping and damage and all of that, that it's just really hard to find nice looking high grade examples. And these are just, one after another. If you could find the Boog Powell and the Bill White, those are the two that, like, to me felt like I couldn't even believe how beautiful they were. And the Boog Powell is a rookie card, and it is just, look at that. It's so common that you see in the black area. He's in Yankee Stadium there, and you see in the grandstands that black area is usually just filled with snow, and this one is just rich and deep and vivid. I like it very much. And then the Bill White was another one. I don't know. I think we photographed the Bill White, 3 or 4 different times, and I still don't think we're quite capturing how amazing this card is in person. It's just so beautiful, and I know, like, it's
look
Bill
at the centering.
White. Oh, it's perfect.
Another one.
Yeah, and it's a recently graded card, I believe, but it's or at least a recently reviewed card. But I think that it's just fantastic. And for me, I grew up in the 70s as a Yankee fan outside of New York, and Bill White was one of the guys who broadcast the Yankee games. And so Bill White's voice is one of the voices of my childhood. So it's really, that card is just kind of a special card to me. All the Hall of Famers are beautiful. The Willie Mays is probably my favorite, but the Clemente, look at that. It's going to be sad to let these go. Great cards.
I don't know if you remember, but I consigned a 62 Topps Clemente in a PSA 7.
Okay.
And when you mentioned to me, it's not going to be able to go in this auction, but maybe a future one. I was like, okay, fine. I'm like, and my Clemente, I mean, it's a strong 7. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. I can't, what does this other one look like? So when the auction catalog preview came out and I'm looking at this card, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. But there's one of the things that we do at Love of the Game that's a little bit different is that I try not to have duplication on certain types of cards. Okay, there's nothing more frustrating than, in my mind, in selling through an auction than consigning a card, opening up the catalog, and there's 11 other examples of the same card in the catalog, all in the same grade or a similar grade.
Next
I mean,
next to each other.
Next to each
Yes.
other. It's here it is in a 4.5. Here it is in a 5. Here's an SGC 5. Here's a PSA 5.5. Here's an SGC 5.5. Here's a 6. Like that doesn't help anybody, and at least we don't think it helps anybody. Now there are some cards that are so liquid that you could have 100 of them side by side, and they're all going to sell for the same price. But when we think that there's going to be some overlap in the bidding, we try and separate those cards so that they're not side by side. I actually had to do that with a 1914 Cracker Jack Ty Cobb one time. I had to turn one down and because I had one already in the auction, and so the person who came to me after I had the one came to me with a complete set, and he wanted us to sell it side by side, card by card, and I had to tell him I could take your entire set except the Cobb. But it's just what we do, and so I felt that way about the Clemente is that I felt like yours was nice, it's a beautiful 7, and we have this beautiful 8, and they're both close in eye appeal, and so
No, the 8 is mine might be a triple, but this 8 is a grand slam. So I also saw that this is the Eye Appeal Inc. 8 rating, and for full disclosure, I am on the council. I didn't vote on this card. I saw it a little too late, but
right.
Yeah, this is a beauty here. All these cards are beauties.
I'm a big fan of the potential of what Eye Appeal Inc. could do for the aesthetics of a card. To kind of get us back to reality when it comes to what is the card that you're holding in your hand look like, rather than what is the number. And I think for us, it's probably more relevant than maybe with some for some other collectors and auction houses, because we really specialize in pre-war cards, and particularly 19th century cards, right? And a lot of those cards were produced with blank backs, and they were mounted in scrapbooks at some point in their life. And when they were removed from the scrapbook, they're left with staining on the back. It's irrelevant. And yet a lot of these cards, there's not a lot of consistency in the quality of the image on the card. You'll find old Judge cards that have very washed out looking image. You have other old Judge cards where the image is bright and vivid, and the clarity is amazing. And side by side, you'll see here's this one with a washed out image and it's a 7, and here's this one with a beautiful image and it's a 1, because it's got a a glue stain on the back, right? And advanced collectors, old Judge collectors, have always valued the eye appeal of the card, right? But the hobby at large, really, there's a portion of it that values the number on the card, right? So it's my feeling that something like Eye Appeal Inc. and what it represents, where collectors can look at a card and look at 2 examples of them side by side and say, yeah, this one is much nicer than this one. This one is an A+, and this one is a C, and that A+ might be a 2, and that C might be an 8. And so I think it's really got potential. I don't think you're ever going to get away from the 1 to 10 scale, but I do think that valuing eye appeal, valuing the attractiveness of a card within its grade. Not all 5s are the same, and not all 1s are the same, and I think we need to get back to that, back to that appreciation of the beauty of a card rather than just the number of the card. There's my
So I brought up the page here. So this is that specific 1962 Topps Clemente, and then here's the eye appeal ink page for it. A card to receive A's and A pluses across the board. I mean, yeah, the card has to have the it factor.
For sure.
So this is it. So
the other thing I like is that in some cases the community. I think there was one community review in there too, and it's nice to see that hey, there's an A plus from just a regular collector, and I like that a lot. It allows everybody to weigh in rather than just one person. I like the concept quite a bit, and I hope it takes off.
Al and Andrew, one lot that interests me because I own 2 of these is lot number 16, the 1980 Topps Pepsi Cola All Stars, and this is an actual uncut sheet. And I know it started with 3 sheets, and then there might have been a 4th sheet, and then Topps auctioned that off in 2011. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yep. This right now is a steal at the price that it's at right now. This is one of the most rare, just impossible to find groups of or top sets that there was. This was a test issue that was never produced. Okay, the design of the cards looked very similar to the 1980 Topps cards. If you look really closely, what you'll find is that a couple of different things. The projection of the cropping of some of the images is slightly different than the actual 1980 card. And then the Ron Guidry, which is all the way bottom right, is actually they reversed the image on the Ron Guidry. So he's actually backwards. He looks like a righty, but he was a left-handed pitcher. In his actual 1980 Topps card, he's facing the other direction. So the story goes that Topps produced these with Michael, MSA or MSR. Schechter. Okay. Michael Schechter. And they pitched this idea of doing 1980 Pepsi cards, same way they did with Coke. And so they produced 3 sheets of the cards. Very, very subtle differences between these and the actual 1980 cards. They sent them to Pepsi, and Pepsi executives ultimately didn't decide to go ahead with this promotion. Now, my understanding is of these 3 sheets, one of the sheets was chopped up into individual cards. There may be other sheets out there, but the prevailing wisdom is that they are not front and back sheets. There's, you'll get a proof sheet where you've just got the front of the cards. And I don't think anybody ever looked at that 4th sheet that was auctioned off by Topps to see whether or not it was a full front back sheet. I don't think there are any pictures of it. It was described as a full front back sheet, but I don't think anybody ever saw it. But what you've got here is essentially one of 2 surviving full sheets of these impossibly rare cards. And then look at the player selection. How many Hall of Famers are in there? You got Palmer, Winfield, Reggie, George Brett, Carlton, Yount, Schmidt, Suter, Molitor, Dave Parker, Goose, Carew, Ted Simmons. That's monstrous amount of Hall of Famers. And then you've also got these stars that are still big names today, like Keith Hernandez and Freddie Lynn, J.R. Richard. There's not a clunker on this sheet, and Guidry. It's just such a great. Maybe I'm a little partial to it, Tony, because these are the people I watched growing up, right?
Sure.
These players were all, but I mean, and it's in beautiful, beautiful shape. And again, it's one of 2 that we know of surviving examples of a full uncut sheet, which represents the complete set, front and back. So you're getting the full cards on this sheet, and it displays beautifully. It's just a great piece, and I can't get over the fact that everybody that we have as a customer hasn't bid on this thing. It's I mean, it represents everything that we are as a company, and all of the things that we love about the hobby is right here in this sheet. But it's players that we remember, that we watched, and so I think it's one of the coolest pieces in the auction.
There's no junk wax here. I mean, people think the 85 Topps mini test set is rare, and it is kind of scarce, but this is just on a league of its own in terms of
it's
rarity.
just crazy to me that this even exists, and that it's so perfect in terms of the player selection and iconic American brand and all of this. It's just really cool. Okay. Stored flat, so usually when it comes to sheets, depending on how it's been stored, that's how we ship it. So if it's been rolled up in a tube, then we ship it that way. But if it's never been rolled that way, we like to keep them flat.
As I look at the corners of the uncut sheet, and these corners are nice. I mean, usually if it was rolled, you would see a little bit of that evidence. If it was stored, you would see creases. If it wasn't stored flat, whoever consigned this and owned it before that person, they did a wonderful job just preserving this item.
Yeah, it's a very cool piece. Andrew, you want to talk about some photos?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I think there are several photos that will be of particular interest to card collectors in this auction. Lot 180 is the source image for Overall's T206. And the same goes for lot 181. That's Hans Lobert's T206 image. And both of these are Carl Horner photos. And what makes these two in particular special is that they're both embossed by Horner Studio on the front. So you can see in the one of them is embossed in the lower left and one's in the lower right. I don't remember which one is which, but
here it is.
Yeah, they had the blind stamping. And why that was done for some of his photos and not for others is kind of been lost to time. But the overall, you'll notice, is actually mounted to a board, and PSA will generally not grant Type 1 status to photos that are mounted, but in this case they did, and it's because of that blind stamping. Yeah, they're gorgeous photos, and you can see why the American Tobacco Company wanted to use his portraits for the T206 set, because they're just so well done. But if you go to lot 182, this is Eddie Grant and Moose McCormick, and this is the center panel image for Triple Folder.
It's 202.
Yep. Yeah, so that's pretty great.
Wow. And
then lot 183 is Josh DeVore at the Polo Grounds in 1909. And this one it's a little more obscure, but this is the source image for his Police Gazette supplement.
Okay.
So those are large format supplements that would have been inserted into issues of the Police Gazette, and they're tough. Lot 184, Christy Mathewson wearing his 1911 World Series uniform, which is kind of obscured by the heavy coat that he's wearing, but that is a Grantham Bain photo. That's a great photo of Matty.
Yeah, look at that. There's also an unbelievable collection of Negro League photos. You just don't see that many, and we've got some beauties, some really early Campanella photos. Hall of Famers. Obviously the Cool Papa Bell and Satchel Paige photos that are our covers are beautiful photos. But then there's some other Page images. There's a Willie Wells image. There, I mean, just stuff you don't see, and you know, a lot of really cool Type 1s. And I think what is it, a Type 2 of Dahigo that
Yep.
that's in there as well. That's also very cool.
Yeah, the Campy photos in particular are really interesting because they're so early. They're just
yes, yeah, and you know, there's just not a lot of surviving examples of these. You know, and look at that Campanella. That one is great, and that one is fantastic. The one on, I think he's 17 years old, and on that Elite Giants photo, Andrew.
He's a teenager. I think he might be 19, but either way, I mean,
that's an incredible one.
This photo is amazing.
I mean, you know, you're watching the world change as you're looking at this photo. You know, you're just, you know, you're looking at these guys who, you know, a couple of years before this photo was taken, they weren't allowed to be in baseball, and now 3 of them are major leaguers, and one of them is a manager. You know, like it's just an incredible photo. Dobie was from Jersey, so he's you know, Dobie and Monty Irvin. That's another photo that we have in this, and that photo has been in my life since I was a little kid because I had the opportunity to meet Larry Dobie when I was very, very young, and he signed a print of that photo for me, which has, you know, since I was that one right there. I don't know, when I was 9 or 10 years old, I met him, and he signed that photo, and that enabled me to, you know, that really was one of the things that set me on this road that I'm on, was meeting Larry Dobie and getting this photo, and you know, then having to learn about these, you know, these 2 Hall of Famers who were from New Jersey, where, you know, they're from my state, and you know, it was cool, and so it was great to get this photo for the auction, because that photo is just imprinted in my memory as something that was just, it was always part of my collection, and it's, you know, I still have it. So
the first baseball game that my father remembers going to, he was born in 1945, went to a game, and he says he thinks it was 1952, 51 or 52. Well, he saw Monty Irvin play and with Mays. And Monty Irvin hit a shot at Shibe Park. He still recalls that. He says Monty Irvin hit a shot, but this kid Mays, he was something else. But DeRocher did a good thing by, you know, having Irvin on the team with Mays to kind of, you know, do some mentoring at that time.
You know, the Lot 204 is the cool Papa Bell photo. And talk about eye appeal.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
This is such a fantastic photo, and it's so nice to see it getting the attention that it's getting.
Yeah.
I still think it's got room to grow here, but man, it's nice to see.
That's one of my favorite photos in all of sports. I was giddy when I picked this up, this Kid Simon, like a little kid. You know, it's, you know, between the, you know, it's a perfectly composed shot, you know, and he's got that Homestead Grays jersey, just, you know, and then all of the ads in the background. Just, yeah, I mean, it checks every box for me as far as, you know, photos from this era. It's just a beautiful photo.
This is a wonderful auction. A couple of folks asked me, I told them I was going to interview both of you, and they had questions regarding, you know, your approach to when you get the consignments. You know, how do you take it from getting the item, inventorying it, and then getting it ready for auction until it actually is an auction?
Yeah, it's a process, and I can speak to this a little bit in that, you know, I feel like, you know, we have a very small team here, but I think pound for pound, we have the best team in the hobby. We've got really talented people working on this stuff, and so and we're always looking to improve it and to change it and to, you know, make it better. So when consignments come in, They come in a number of different ways, Tony. Sometimes they get mailed into us. Sometimes we don't even know they're coming. Sometimes we go pick them up, depending on where it is. Sometimes, we have Andrew and myself, and then also Tim Gallagher on the West Coast working on consignments. So there's a lot of coordination, a lot of organization that happens once they come in. We have a person whose job is to handle imaging for us. Her name is Evelyn, and she is a pro at staging things and photographing things properly for our catalog. I think our images look great. And then description writing is something that happens. There's a couple of us that do that. Andrew does some, I do some, and Spike Glidden does some, who's a researcher who's on the Sabre baseball cards committee and is a very good guy. And then there's always people that we tap into who if something comes in and we don't really know enough about it to feel that we can articulate what this thing is properly. We have different people that we go out who specialize in this type of thing or that type of thing who help us. So it's a good group. And then from there, deciding what goes where, that's pretty much me who does that. And our designer, Stephanie, who designs our catalog with us, and she's also pretty great, so that's how you'll see what's on the cover and how big is a thing in the auction catalog and that sort of thing. That tends to be my witchcraft that I do here, and that's pretty much what it is. There's not really rhyme or reason to it. Like if I think something needs to be bigger, or if I think this is the right thing for the cover, I usually don't. I know some auction houses will promise the cover to a certain consignor. I don't. They'll say, "Oh, I'll make that lot number 1 and put it on." I don't do. I don't do that with the cover, because the cover really tells me what's going to be on the cover. If that makes sense, I kind of wait till the auction is together. And then I sort of evaluate, what does this auction feel like, and that sort of thing. And that's kind of how we pick what's on the front, what's on the back, and what are the prominent issues throughout the book, or prominent images throughout the book, and that kind of thing. So,
going back to writing, because we were talking about writing descriptions, I think it's also worth noting that if we get a special collection, and we do. When we get special collections, we'll sometimes do a special section in the catalog.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we might bring in, for lack of a better term, a specialist to write an intro to that section, because it's worthy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I like to make the catalog something that you're going to want to hang on to, and one way to do that is to put informative, writing in it. So we've done that. We did that with we had Jacob Pomeranke write a piece about the Black Sox trial. Yep. We had who did the Dodgers Yankees? Remember that? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Mark Armour?
Yes, that's who it was.
That was we had every ticket stub from every New York Yankees Brooklyn Dodgers World Series game. And so we did a whole section of the catalog about the Yankees-Dodgers rivalries of the 50s, and that kind of thing is fun. And so if we get the opportunity to present a collection that way, we will. And you're going to see one of those from us this year. That's going to be an entire auction. And we haven't announced it. We haven't talked about it yet. But if you just stay tuned and watch, we're going to be doing one of the cooler auctions that you'll ever see later this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. But we put a lot of effort into the presentation. The other thing that's important to note here, I think, is that all of our descriptions are written by actual human beings, and that is becoming more and more of an issue in this hobby. All of our descriptions, all of our ad copy, all of our social media captions are written by a person. And I think that's important because there are human beings doing research. What I'm getting at here is AI, and that we're finding more and more descriptions that are written by AI. And the problem with that is that AI uses the information that's out there, that's available, and it's trained on that, right? So if there is an inaccurate piece of information out there, the AI is going to gobble that up, and it's going to regurgitate that in an auction description. And then that auction description becomes part of what the next AI bot goes out there and reads. And pretty soon you've got this perpetuating thing where the information that's being spit out is not accurate. And Andrew and I are seeing it more and more. And we're seeing inaccurate information more and more. And so, I think that's kind of an important thing about what we do. There's some component of this that we feel is academic and scholarly, and we try and take that approach to our descriptions and just basically everything about how we present Love of the Game. And so it's just a policy, I guess, and we'll be talking about that more as we go forward after this auction is over.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I know you're
appreciate you taking time out of your busy day.
Yeah. Okay, the three of us, but you're working on this auction, then you got the next auction, and then you're answering questions. Appreciate it, and thank you for everything you do for the hobby, both of you.
Thank you, Tony,
and the entire team.
The same. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that, and thank you. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you for a bit. So, anybody who's going to be in Strongsville this weekend, Andrew will be there for Love of the Game. He's going to be, he's actually leaving me, and going to set up at the Strongsville show for Love of the Game. So stop by and visit if you have any consignments, if you have anything that you want to see in our summer auction. Andrew will be there accepting consignments.
And it's a first-time consigner with your auction company. It's like a small business approach. You're just not treated like any other person. Love of the Game, at least in my experience, they asked about my needs. What do I want to do? Asked about the items, and it's been a very pleasurable experience so far. So you will not be disappointed, and you will not have one of your cards next to 5 other copies of that same card, which we talked about, which scared me away from some of the other houses. And the descriptions, like I had some of my cards, and I'm looking at, I'm like, oh, okay. I looked at the description. I'm like, oh, really? So I looked at the card and stuff like, yeah, I missed that, or I didn't know about that. So I was the curator of these cards for multiple years, and I'm learning new descriptions, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful.
I think one of the things, and I appreciate that, I really do, but I think one of the things about this relationship that we have on this with you in particular is that you are so engaged with the hobby and so engaged with your collection that you were able to educate us on some things that and to point out some things. I can think of one item in particular that we described a certain way, and you were so familiar with that item that you reached out and said, I think you're describing this way, but would you mind taking a look at it? And I pulled the thing out myself and said, yeah, you know what, you're right, and we were able to adjust the description based on that. So it's a reciprocal kind of thing, Tony, where there's a lot. It's impossible for us to be experts in every single thing, right? And so we do the best that we can, and we are always trying to learn. But when a consigner is that intimately knowledgeable about the things in their collection and the things that they're consigning, we're able to learn from you, and that reflects itself in the description and in the way that we present the thing. So I'm glad that you're happy with that, but I wish every consigner was like you in that way. And so
it's a true partnership. That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
at least for me. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.